প্রিয় দর্শক, আমি মাসুমা খাতুন বাংলা ভালোবাসি অনুষ্ঠানে আপনাদের সবাইকে স্বাগত জানাচ্ছি। আশা করি ভালো আছেন। আমার অনেক অনেক শুভেচ্ছা নিন। আজ আমরা দর্শকদের অনুরোধে একটি গুরুত্বপূর্ণ সাক্ষাৎকার পুনঃপ্রচার করছি। যুক্তরাষ্ট্র কংগ্রেসে বাংলাদেশ ককাসের কো-চেয়ার কংগ্রেসম্যান জোসেফ ক্রাউলি। আপনারা হয়তো জানেন, এবছরই বাংলাদেশের গার্মেন্টস শিল্প এদেশে কোটা হারিয়েছে। তাতে এই শিল্পটি বিশেষ বিপর্যয়ের সম্মুখীন। বাংলাদেশ এবং অন্যান্য কয়েকটি দরিদ্র দেশকে বাণিজ্যে সাহায্যের জন্য যুক্তরাষ্ট্র কংগ্রেসে একটি বাণিজ্য বিল উত্থাপিত হয়েছে। এই বিলটির বিষয়ে আমরা জোসেফ ক্রাউলিকে কিছু প্রশ্ন করেছি, সেই সঙ্গে বাংলাদেশের দুইটি বিষয়ে। আর তার সাক্ষাৎকার নিয়েছেন সেদিন তার দপ্তরে গিয়ে একসময় বাংলাদেশ টেলিভিশনের বিশিষ্ট সংবাদ পাঠিকা এবং বর্তমানে বিশ্ব ব্যাংকে কর্মরত ডক্টর সাদিয়া চৌধুরী।
Good afternoon. We are here today to talk with Congressman Joseph Crowley, who's really been a friend for Bangladesh, and especially Bangladeshi Americans. He has been the co-chair of the Bangladesh Caucus in Congress, and it's been fortunate that he's been able to give us a little bit of time today where we can get him to sort of help us to understand a little bit about the trade situation, the quota system in Bangladesh, and about Bangladesh happenings in Bangladesh. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Let me ask you, as you were very familiar being the co-chair of the Bangladesh caucus, you know that with the lifting of the quota system, with which we had a favorable situation in Bangladesh, it's not going to be an advantage for us. We'll be in quite a negative situation. But I know that you are now introducing the Trade Act, which will be giving us preferential treatment, not only us, but a few other countries. And it will probably help us to become more competitive in this whole trade. Now, can you tell us what you are doing, tell our viewers what exactly you are doing to help to pass the bill, and also maybe advise us as to what we in Bangladeshis in America can do to help the process through also.
Sure. Well, as you know, and as many of your viewing audience understands, that the garment industry has been a major industry in Bangladesh and has employed thousands and thousands of people, and has helped really build up a standard of living, a better quality of living for many people in Bangladesh, particularly women. The number of women who actually work in garment factory settings in good and decent paying jobs have been able to enhance the value of their own lives and the value of their families' lives as well. So I've recognized, having visited Bangladesh and been to those garment places of industry to see the workers and the work that's being done, I have an understanding of how important the garment industry is for Bangladesh. At the same time, always prodding the Bangladesh government and those involved in industry for the need to diversify their workforce more and more, not to become reliant or so reliant upon one particular facet of industry for such a large portion of its population. But having said that, that's not going to change anytime soon. With the coming in 2005 of what really amounts to an advantage to China, in particular, in terms of garment trade. Countries like developing countries like Bangladesh find themselves at a disadvantage now because they're competing against China, where they have a much larger workforce, where the actual cost of production is much less. Their ability to deliver is much more inexpensive to them to do that as well to countries like the United States. We've introduced the trade bill, myself and Jim Colby, who are both the key sponsors of this legislation, dealing not only with Bangladesh, but with the 14 most least developed countries in the world that were not a part of the AGOA agreement. And it also includes Sri Lanka, because they too find themselves in difficult straits in terms of the competition with China. The bill was introduced by Mr. Colby and myself. It's working its way through the Ways and Means Committee. where I've been talking to a number of members of the committee, including Charlie Rangel, who's the ranking member on the Democratic side of the aisle, to move the bill forward. And Charlie's a friend of Bangladesh, and he's also a friend of the developing world, and I think it's something he would like to see happen. It would also need to get the support in the Senate and of the administration, quite frankly, to make it happen. What Bangladeshi Americans can do is certainly they can write to their members of Congress and their senators about the need to pass this legislation. But there's also other countries that are involved in this as well. The other 14 countries, I think, need to also step up, and their representatives in terms of populations here in the United States need to speak up as well.
And create sort of a movement to
a grassroots movement towards passing the bill.
Right. And how long do you think this process is going to take?
You know, it's hard to say.
An approximate sort of...
It really is very difficult to say. Sometimes it can take months and years for bills to pass. The issue really here is more timely because of the, what happened in terms of the change in 2005. It's already in effect that has given China such an advantage. That time is really of the essence. This in and of itself, passing of this bill may not, it may help and it may not help enough to keep the industries going in terms of competing with China, but I think we need to at least give them an opportunity.
Right, it just would be a first step, and
That's
then
correct.
one can
That's
see
right.
what happens from there. But thank you. I do know that you have been very kind to give us some time, and I don't want to take too much of your time, but there are two things which are very important to us, and we want to know more about it. At least from our side, we know what's happening, but we would like to hear your view about it. One is, you know that Rapid Action Group in Bangladesh, RAB, has been deployed to help to improve the law and order situation in Bangladesh. Now, there are various views on this. Some feel that, yes, it's moving ahead and doing its work well, but others also feel that while doing it, there may be some compromise on human rights, etc. And what do you feel about it? We've heard the word witch hunt used. I wouldn't like to use it so strongly, but it's sort of been used and people getting victimized. What would you say about it?
Well, my experience here with the Bangladeshi people in the United States has been extraordinary, and grateful for the opportunity to represent so many in Congress. Decent, hardworking, loyal people who believe in the value of good work, who believe in fairness, who believe in community. I know that the overwhelming population of their brothers and sisters back in Bangladesh believe the same way. And there are few who cause a great deal of trouble for the many. And law and order is an issue in Bangladesh. It's from the top down and from the bottom up. The government itself has been criticized over the years as being one of the most corrupt governments in the world, and is, I think, an issue that needs to continue to be addressed. And I think the government and the Prime Minister Zia has been focusing on it and trying to enact changes legislatively in terms of the Corruption Commission. We need to see that commission fully up and moving and coming up with recommendations that then are carried through on. But it also trickles down to the lower echelon. The police force, there's a great deal of corruption that exists on the lower level as well. Having visited Bangladesh, and I could see the ways in which the local populace has had to deal with the local police. Again, it's hard to hold a country like Bangladesh to the standards that we're living with here in the United States. But at the same time, I think there's a certain level of human rights that needs to be respected. Having said that, Bangladesh is also dealing with fundamentalism to a degree, and rabble-rousers and those that would exploit political issues for criminal activity. And I think that there has been an outcry, especially with the recent bombings and the killings that have taken place, for the government to really show that it has the ability to address some of those issues. I think in order for Bangladesh to become to qualify for some assistance from the United States, it needs to get a handle more on its corruption as it exists.
Corruption and human rights. Human rights is human rights wherever you are in the world, and that has to be respected, definitely.
There's a real balance here that I think has to take place.
They have to play a balance, and the government had definitely taken some steps that they had this special force come out to help them keep the law and order situation, but sometimes they're probably getting a bit too zealous. And within, while doing their duty, they may, so we hear, we don't know, there is no fact in our hands at this point of time, but so we hear that while doing their work, they may just get a little overzealous. And so we wondered if you had any reports on that, or if you had any comments on
We've
it.
had heard of some of those incidents in the past. What I would say is that the optimum here is to have a qualified police force, one that has the respect of the people, and one in which the police force respects the people that they're policing. That is the optimum. And in a developing world, in a developing country like Bangladesh, you don't always have the optimum. It makes it more challenging and more difficult. The level of pay that police officers are paid in Bangladesh is wanting. And I think that also, unfortunately, leads to corruption at the lower level as well as the higher level because of the way in which people have to survive. So I think those are some of the issues that need to be addressed as well down
But
the
that's,
road.
I mean, the level of pay is an issue which affects the whole workforce, but more and so that the law enforcers need to be more careful.
Well, more so because police officers are supposed to enforce the law, and if the atmosphere is not correct or proper, we've seen it here in the United States, we've certainly had it in New York as well. When pay is an issue, police officers can sometimes be led astray, and I think that's not only an issue in Bangladesh, it's all over the world.
I just hope our leadership in Bangladesh hear what you're saying and take that to heart, because that's going to be very important. The other thing that you alluded to is this whole movement within, I mean, it's not become that much of a movement, but there's definitely some forces within Bangladesh who tend to be very fundamentalist and sometimes may be engaging in terrorist activities, and we've seen, the recent killings which have happened, and which is really concerning for us here. So we were just wondering if there are any. We know that the Bangladesh government has recently taken some steps, but other than that, do you know of what steps you think are going to be taken in the recent years or so by yourselves, the U.S. government, or what you would advise the Bangladesh government on this?
What I can tell you is that I've had numerous meetings with members of the Bangladesh government here in Washington, as well as back in New York, and we've discussed the issue as it pertains to law and order, and as it pertains to political repression, and as it pertains to finding those out who is responsible for the killings and for the bombings, that it's important for the future of Bangladesh, for the stability of this government. Regardless, putting politics aside, I think it's in the interest of this government to expose who is responsible for these killings. There was an attempt to decapitate the opposition. Now, that's not to say that I believe that Prime Minister Zia nor her political party were directly responsible for that. I don't know who's responsible for it. But I think in terms of Bangladesh politics, we need to find out who those individuals are. There certainly may very well be nefarious organizations that want to see Bangladesh further destabilized, who will use any opportunity to create chaos. Thankfully, that hasn't happened yet, but I think that this issue needs to be resolved so as to create a political environment where they may never like each other, but they have to trust that each side is not trying to kill each other.
Right, and they have to learn to live with each other.
They have to learn to live with each other. I don't get involved in the personalities of the people running the government or their like or dislike of each other. But I think it's important for the future of Bangladesh that there has to be a certain level of civility within democracy in order to make it work. That a democracy is not about the majority rule for the sake of the majority, but the majority rule to protect the interests of all, including the minority.
And there should also be the level of respect for each
respect is tantamount. Without respect, there is really no true democracy.
Absolutely.
That I think is critical.
So would you, I mean, do I hear that you're saying that the Bangladesh government needs to take a firm step and ensure that whoever has been responsible, they try to find out who's been responsible and ensure that that's brought out, so there's absolute transparency?
I think there has to be absolute transparency, and I know that our government is asking for that as well. Our government has also offered and has been assisting with the FBI, but that has to be transparent. There has to be full cooperation, and I think that there are the resources in the world to find out who is responsible. I think that the Bangladeshi government just needs to find out. not being able to find out is simply not an acceptable answer. There has to be an ability to find out who is responsible for those
Would you like to tell us how FBI has been involved in this? Or
Well, I know the FBI in the past has been, initially was involved. There was some discouragement when they didn't believe they were getting full cooperation with the Bangladeshi police and investigators. I know there has been discussion again, and I believe the FBI is back involved in Bangladesh to assist them in terms of finding out, developing the evidence. I think some of the evidence had been tampered with, or inadvertently maybe had been tampered with, and made the case a much more difficult case to solve. But I think at the very least, the idea that the Bangladeshi government is not only trying hard to find out who's responsible, I think there needs to be some steps taken, and they need to bring those who are responsible to justice.
Absolutely. We do really appreciate your support and the support of your government in ensuring that we move towards true democracy, which all the people of Bangladesh have fought for in 71 and are moving forward.
And I really believe that the people of Bangladesh want that they're a tolerant people. Fundamentalism itself is something that has not taken hold in Bangladesh. I think, though, that poverty is something that contributes to fundamentalism, and certainly we're trying to help, I think, in that sense, try to alleviate some of those conditions. But fundamentalism finds its way, it has life when there is hardship, and when people have nowhere else to turn, and they're looking for someone to blame.
Absolutely.
And I think that's why we as Americans have responsibility. We know what happened in other countries that were struggling, whether it was in Afghanistan or elsewhere, where they struggling and fundamentalism took root, and we saw the results of that. In many respects, responsible for September 11th. And I don't want Bangladesh to continue to ask me, what do we need to be more like Pakistan in order to get attention from the United States? We, the United States, should be paying more attention to Bangladesh now, helping alleviate some of its woes.
Right. And I'm sure Bangladeshis would not want to be like Pakistan. I mean, we respect that country, but we want to have our own identity and be like ourselves. And we do appreciate the fact that we want to be a very secular state, tolerant and respectful of everyone, and that's what we want to work for. We do appreciate that very much, the support that's coming from you. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And we hope we can get much more advice from you sometime later.
I'd be happy to do that. As the bill moves forward, I'll be happy to
Exactly. I just wanted to point out here that the U.S. government is also very supportive in the whole area of education, especially of women and girl children, as well as the whole empowerment of women, which is very important.
I think it is too, and I was very happy to be in country in Bangladesh last year with Prime Minister Zia to lay the cornerstone for the Asian University for Women in Chittagong, and it was very moving, and I enjoyed it very, very much. And I think there is a tremendous amount of opportunity for Bangladesh, and I think a lot of that lies with its relationship with the United States. And I think furthering that and bolstering that is what I'm about and what I want to do, because I think there's a tremendous opportunity for Bangladesh, taking advantage of some of its natural resources. But the number one natural resource is the people themselves.
Exactly. Thank you for saying that, and then we hope we can make full use of our opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
মাতৃভূমি থেকে আমরা কত দূরে, তবু বাংলাদেশের মাটির মায়া আমাদের প্রাণে ছড়িয়ে রয়েছে। এবারের গানে আমাদের প্রাণের অনুভূতি যেন প্রাণ পেয়েছে।
আমার দেশে